The invisible inheritance, how generational trauma shapes us differently. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I want to begin by acknowledging the extraordinary woman whose insights form the foundation of what I'm about to share with you. Sanithia Stevens is nothing short of a revolutionary force in the field of generational trauma healing within Black communities. When I first interviewed Sanithia, I was struck not just by her brilliance, but by her profound compassion. Here was someone who had dedicated her life to illuminating the darkest corners of our collective inheritance, not to leave us trapped in that darkness, but to guide us toward the light of healing. Her work has transformed thousands of lives across this country, creating ripples of restoration that will continue for generations. Sanithia doesn't just study trauma, she helps people transcend it. And that transcendence is what I want to talk about tonight. When we think about inheritance, what typically comes to mind? Perhaps property, money, or physical traits passed down through generations. But there's another inheritance many of us receive, one that's invisible yet profoundly shapes our lives. I'm talking about generational trauma. Now, here's something that might challenge what you believe. According to Sanithia's groundbreaking research, generational trauma doesn't affect each child in a family the same way. Even siblings raised under the same roof can experience and internalize family trauma differently, sometimes leading to vastly different worldviews, coping mechanisms, and life outcomes. Let that sink in for a moment. The same family history can create entirely different realities for each child. Two sisters might grow up with the same emotionally distant father, yet one might develop fierce independence while the other struggles with abandonment fears throughout adulthood. Two brothers might witness the same racial discrimination against their parents, yet one channels that pain into activism while the other develops chronic anxiety about his own worth. This insight shatters the common assumption that family history shapes all children equally. In reality, generational wounds create unique struggles and strengths for each individual. And understanding this variation helps us move beyond simplistic explanations of how trauma affects families. It invites us to look deeper at the complex ways our histories live within us differently. Sanithia shared three key insights with me that might transform how you think about this inheritance. First, generational trauma is both personal and collective. It's not just about what happened in your direct household. It's also about inherited pain from historical events like slavery or systemic racism that continue to impact African American families today. The weight of these experiences doesn't simply disappear with time. They become encoded in our bodies, our behaviors, our beliefs about what's possible for us. A grandmother who lived through Jim Crow segregation might never speak of those experiences, yet her hypervigilance around white authority figures becomes a silent lesson passed to her children and grandchildren. The trauma travels forward, often without words to name it. Second, the signs of generational trauma often appear as everyday behaviors we might not even question. Difficulty setting boundaries, repeating unhealthy relationship patterns, feeling disconnected from one's cultural identity. These aren't just personal quirks or character flaws, they're often echoes of adaptive strategies that helped our ancestors survive difficult circumstances. That perfectionism you struggle with, it might be connected to generations of your family having to be twice as good just to be given a chance, that tendency to overwork yourself. Perhaps it echoes ancestors who couldn't afford to rest, that difficulty trusting others. Maybe it reflects generational lessons about who was safe and who wasn't. And third, healing starts with awareness and intentional action. By identifying these patterns within ourselves and our families and seeking support through community connection or therapy, we can begin breaking cycles of pain while reclaiming our stories. This isn't abstract theory. Let me share some powerful, real world examples that illustrate these principles in action. Consider the Johnson siblings, a Black family with four adult children living across different cities in the US. They grew up experiencing their parents' unspoken grief tied to historical injustices. Each sibling struggled differently with anxiety, perfectionism, or difficulty trusting others. Yet none initially connected these issues back to their shared upbringing, marked by silence around race related adversity. What changed their trajectory? A mental health crisis faced by one brother during college, triggered by racial discrimination. This catalytic event prompted the siblings to attend group counseling sessions focused on intergenerational healing. Through this process, they discovered something profound. Their individual struggles weren't random or isolated. They were connected threads in a larger tapestry of family history. Through open dialogue facilitated by culturally competent therapists, they found new empathy for each other's struggles. Two siblings even became advocates for mental wellness within their local communities. Their response to this awakening: they established an annual healing weekend where extended relatives gather for workshops on communication skills and cultural pride. What's remarkable about the Johnson story isn't just their personal healing, it's how they transformed their awareness into community action. Their initiative has inspired similar programs among Black professional organizations nationwide, creating spaces where others can begin their own healing journeys. Or consider the Carter sisters' entrepreneurial journey. Three sisters launched a consulting business serving minority owned startups after recognizing shared self doubt rooted in messages passed down through generations. Messages like, people like us don't succeed. They encountered internalized limiting beliefs that hindered growth, hesitating before pitching ideas or negotiating contracts due to inherited fears of rejection based on race and gender bias. By participating together in leadership coaching programs designed specifically for women of color and sharing stories with other Black female founders, they began reframing those narratives into affirmations of resilience. Their company doubled its client base within 2 years. More importantly, they reported increased confidence when advocating for themselves professionally. The sisters co authored an ebook on overcoming imposter syndrome among Black women entrepreneurs, now used as curriculum at several HBCUs. What's powerful about the Carter sister story is how they didn't just identify their inherited limitations, they actively transformed them into tools for collective liberation. They recognized that their personal healing could become a pathway for others. And finally, there's the Umoja Project, a nonprofit founded by African American professionals creating peer led support groups addressing health disparities linked to chronic stress from generational trauma. Participants faced higher rates of hypertension and diabetes compared with peers outside their demographic, conditions exacerbated by ongoing microaggressions at work and home environments compounded over generations. The organization integrated culturally grounded wellness practices, including storytelling circles where members could unpack experiences unique to being part of multi generational Black families, in partnership with local clinics offering holistic care. Members reported reduced stress levels after 6 months alongside improved physical health markers. There was also greater engagement between elders and youth, discussing difficult histories openly rather than avoiding them. This initiative helped shift public discourse around root causes behind health inequities facing African Americans, from individual blame towards systemic understanding informed by historical context. What these three examples share is a profound truth Sanithia Stevens articulated so beautifully in our interview. Healing from generational trauma requires both individual awareness and collective action. It demands that we look unflinchingly at our inheritance while believing in our power to transform it. This matters profoundly for those in what Sanithia calls their soft girl era, particularly high achieving Black women who have spent years in survival mode, women who've led teams, raised families, held down households, carried communities, but now find themselves exhausted, women ready to shift from constantly grinding to finally grounding in joy, peace, softness, and self prioritization. For these women, especially, understanding generational trauma offers a pathway to dropping the superwoman cape. It helps explain why saying no feels so difficult when you've inherited generations of women who couldn't afford that luxury. It illuminates why rest might feel dangerous when your grandmothers never had that privilege. As Sanithia shared with me, softness is not weakness, it's a radical act of self love, especially for those whose ancestors had to be perpetually strong just to survive. So, where do we go from here? How do we take these insights and create meaningful change? I challenge you to consider your own invisible inheritance. What patterns do you carry that might not be yours to begin with? What beliefs limit you that were adaptive for your ancestors but no longer serve you? What strengths have you developed precisely because of your family's journey? Start conversations, difficult, honest conversations about the unspoken legacies in your family. Ask questions about the silences. Listen to the stories. Connect the dots between past experiences and present patterns. Seek support in this journey. Healing rarely happens in isolation. Find therapists who understand the complexities of generational trauma. Join communities where these conversations are welcomed. Create spaces where healing can happen collectively. And perhaps most importantly, believe in the possibility of transformation. Your inheritance is not your destiny. The patterns that have shaped you need not define you or the generations that follow. I stand before you today not just as someone who interviewed Sanithia Stevens, but as someone forever changed by her wisdom. Her work reminds us that the most revolutionary act isn't just surviving our inheritance, it's transforming it into something that heals rather than hurts. The wounds of generations past need not determine our future. We can acknowledge our inheritance while writing a new story. We can honor our ancestors' survival while choosing our own thriving. We can break cycles while creating new possibilities. This is the work of our lifetime, and it begins with the courage to look within, to speak the unspeakable, to heal what has remained hidden. It begins with us here today. Thank you.